Oftentimes in our programs, we'll have fields that we don't allow to be set once they've been initialized. That's where final fields come in. Now there are two kinds of final fields. A simple final field must be set during the creation of an object instance. That means it must be set using either a field initializer, an initialization block, or a constructor. Let's look at some code that uses that. Remember we have our passenger class. Remember our passenger class, we had this idea that a passenger could be created with a number of free bags that they received. We set that, of course, inside of our constructor. Now, we may define in our business models the fact that the number of free bags is considered an aspect of the passenger. So it can only be set during the creation of that passenger. So we can do that by taking our free bags declaration and simply including the word final there. By including that word final, any attempt to set free bags after it's been set in the constructor will actually result in a compile error. So the compiler enforces that rule that it can't be assigned once it's been set. Now there's also what's known as a static final field. Static final fields create basically named constants. And a static final field cannot be changed in any object instance. Its value is actually tied to the class itself. So we look at that in code. Look at our flight class. Remember that our flight class has this concept of the number of seats on a flight. So an instance of our flight class can set the number of seats, so we simply have a setter to do that. But let's say that the Federal Aviation Administration, right, that's the organization in the United States that sets the rules for planes. Let's say that they set a rule that there is a maximum number of seats that a flight is allowed to have. And we'll say that that's 550. So we can declare a static final field called max_FAA_seats that has a value of 550. Now the convention is that whenever you have a static final, you use all caps for the name of the field. And what we can do here is down inside of our set seats, we can actually use that max FAA seats just like it's a value. Right, so inside of here, let's say we make some room, and we can actually put a check in to say, well, if seats is less than or equal to max FAA seats, we set it. Otherwise, we handle the error. The key here is that no object instance can create this. Max FAA seats will have the value of 550 in all flight instances. We use this most commonly when we're trying to avoid what we often call magic numbers, where we don't like to put literal numbers inside of our code. Because when we look at this code, we know that the reason we're checking the value of seats is that the FAA has a rule on the max. If we just dropped a 550 in there, that wouldn't necessarily make sense. Now we often have times where we want to limit a type to a finite number of values. And that's where the enumeration types come in. Enumeration types allow us to define a type that has a list of valid values. We declare those using the enum keyword. So let's go ahead and declare an enum for the jobs that the flight crew is allowed to have. So you notice we use the word enum there instead of the word class. And then inside there we can simply provide a comma-separated list of the valid values. So let's say the flight crew jobs could be a pilot, a co-pilot, a flight attendant, or an air marshal. So now we can use flight crew job as a type. So let's say we introduce a new class here called crew member. Crew members have a job of type flight crew job. So we can go ahead and set that as part of the constructor of crew member, as well as we have a setter to change the job of a crew member. So now if we go off and create an instance of crew member, called Judy, one of our new crew members, we can give her a job. So we'll say she's a co-pilot. So notice the way we do this is we use the name of the enumeration dot one of the values. So we've created Judy to be a co-pilot. Let's say some time goes by and Judy gets a promotion. Well, we can now make Judy the pilot. So we can simply say Judy.setJob. Again, we use the enumeration name flight crew job dot and the value pilot. Enumerations are most commonly used in this way, defining this finite list of values. But enumeration types actually have a number of much more advanced capabilities beyond this that we'll talk about later in the course.